Okay, Council, 2 o'clock, and looks like we have everyone here. So we will call to order our regular meeting of Council and start by acknowledging that we're holding our meeting on the unceded territories of the Sishat and Hupachesit First Nations. Council, we have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items to add to the agenda from councillors? Councillor Corbeil?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd like to entertain that the council talk about the possibility of an emergency resolution to the Vancouver Island Coastal Community Conference.
Okay, we could put that under new business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from councillors? Okay, and anything from the city clerk?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Then council, would somebody like to move approval of our agenda with the late item? Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Okay, and we have minutes from the special meeting of council held at 10:30 a.m. and the regular meeting of council held at 2 p.m. on February 22nd, 2021. Somebody like to move adoption?
Move to adopt.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Poon, seconded by Councillor Solda. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And that brings us to public input period, which is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. That can be done by prior submission or by signing up to speak during our meeting. Twyla, are there any comments today?
No comments, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Then right to delegations. And our first one, we have Marcy DeWitt in attendance to provide council with a project overview for the 2021 Port Alberni homeless count taking place on April 7th. Welcome, Marcy. We will turn it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Great, that was fast. Thank you for having me this afternoon, Mayor and Council. Always a pleasure to join you. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I can find the presentation fast here. There we go. So I'm here to talk to you today about the provincial homelessness count. We had scheduled this for 2020, and as you know, we had to push pause on the count as planned. So now for 2021, we are back and hoping to see this come to fruition. Just wanted to give you a couple updates on what we are looking at. So I'll just give you a quick review of the project, what that looks like, our COVID protocols and what we are doing in order to keep our count volunteers safe, and then as well as next steps. So the 2018 report on homelessness had participation from across BC. I'll get into the methodology around the homelessness counts in BC and the partners involved. But essentially, we ensure that there is a good proportion of communities that are asking the same questions so that we have good data throughout the province that is comparable. In 2018, these are our numbers for the Alberni Valley for the count that we hosted in 2018. And so you can see that there was 147 people identified as experiencing homelessness, 43% of those sheltered and 57% of those unsheltered. There is specific questions on Indigenous representation and if they self-identify. Additionally, in our area, as well as on Vancouver Island as a whole, we have an extra question that allows individuals when they self-identify to also identify what nation they might identify with or might be from. And so for that information, we make it quite clear to all the nations in the region that they have access to that information. It is essentially theirs. So just being sure that that is well publicized and known within the communities. So if nations have specific questions or would like access to that data, I'm always happy to ensure that they can connect with the partners at the Homelessness Services Association of BC. So that brings us to our provincial count overview. So 2021 or 2020, 2021, it's a mouthful right at the moment to say. There were 16 homeless point in time counts. I believe that at least 2/3 of the counts were completed in 2020. And there was a handful of us that were having counts in later March and April that have been postponed to 2021. So the team includes the Homelessness Services Association of BC, BCNPHA, do not ask me what that stands for exactly, Urban Matters, as well as the local communities. And I am personally contracted through HSABC, and they are the key point of contact for most media and questions on the methodology. So the components of a point-in-time homelessness count, these include a night count, a day count, and then events that we host in order to ensure that individuals are included. So the night count is sheltered individuals that are sheltered. This includes shelters, transition houses, hospitals, even jail cells. So that is a simple tally on the night before the 24-hour count. Whereas the day count is the 24-hour period identified as our homelessness count. And that includes walking and driving routes, surveys being done by volunteers. And then we also have drop sites. So service organizations typically where individuals are receiving service and or tend to use as warming sites. So we will be focusing on those for this count. And in the past, we did have Magnet and Connect events with COVID protocols in mind. We won't be doing this quite as much, but we have partnered with the Bread of Life and we'll be ensuring that that is included as a drop site with the Warming Center, as well as with the Salvation Army truck. So as I mentioned, the purpose of doing a count in BC is to ensure that the methodology around our homelessness counts is consistent across the province. It's easier for comparability. This gives us information to provide to BC Housing, and BC Housing is the funder of these counts. So it gives us a good baseline to compare to past counts. It also contributes to our ability to leverage funding for the area. And just a quick reminder, for the purpose of the count, the homelessness is defined as unsheltered homelessness. So people living outside alleys, doorways, parkades, tents, parks, and vehicles, also including people who are couch surfing, as well as sheltered homelessness. So as I mentioned, those staying in emergency shelters for homeless, anybody without a fixed address who are in health, correction, and detox facilities on the night of the count. So just a quick little overview. We have been in the midst of planning for a number of months now. We have set the date for the homelessness count in collaboration with our partners locally. That is going to be April 7th. And then another key piece to know is the Alberni Valley has been approved for a pilot project. So we will be a pilot extended count. So that means that we will be counting for 5 days following the 24-hour count. So April 6th will be our night count for all of our sheltered homeless. April 7th is the 24-hour count, where we'll be conducting the majority of our activities. And then from the 8th to the 12th, there will be a slightly separate survey, and that will contain some identifying information and questions for individuals to ensure that they aren't double screened, but it'll allow us to capture anybody who hasn't been seen in that 24-hour period. So it is exciting. We will be focusing the majority of our efforts on the 24-hour count, but that does allow us to kind of buoy up our numbers and I guess make accommodations for some of the facts that were more urban adjacent in the Alberni Valley, and often have a little bit of a combination of rural and urban homelessness that is seen. So really accounting for those that might be in trailers and unsuitably housed and or couch surfing as well. So volunteers are key to success. A key difference around our 2021 count from our 2020 and 2018 planning is that we will not be utilizing volunteers in the count. So we will be relying on outreach workers in the region. We have a variety of partners throughout the region already signed up and collaborating. And as you know, we have a strong contingent of local partners that are already providing services to individuals that are experiencing barriers to housing. So we will be working with the RCMP, Shelter Society, CMHA, especially their outreach workers, Bread of Life, Salvation Army, Friendship Center, to name a few. So we have a good contingent of individuals. We are going to be doing walking and driving surveys in the street and shelter. And then we have a variety of different drop sites. So anywhere from the OPS up to ACAUSE and all those places in between. Just see, we have been working very closely with all of those partners in order to ensure that we have our mapping and locations identified. So we have a pretty good sense of where everybody, I guess, is primarily at this point. And we have the ability to be flexible within the day. So we know that sometimes homelessness in our communities can change quite rapidly. And so we will be kind of moving with that as we go. So as I said, local context is the best for our mapping sessions. And luckily we do have a strong team helping to inform all of the information that we're pulling in and how we're doing our planning. So a good amount of drop sites in all of the organizations that are providing frontline service, as well as a strong team of outreach workers. CMHA, the Untitled Tribal Council CUAS team, as well as RCMP will kind of be our go-tos for our on the street outreach teams. And then I guess a couple other key points is, unlike 2018, we will not be able to base ourselves inside. So we will be outside in the courtyard of CMHA, conducting quick training sessions with all the volunteers that come in so that we can get them in and get them out with limited contact. Staying outside. We will not be hosting a large training session like in past years. We will be doing that live in person, quick orientations before people head out the door. So that's, I think, the synopsis of what we have planned for this year. I know that you got to receive the presentation last year, so it is a little bit of a duplication, but those are the highlights for the changes for this year. So thank you very much for having me in to provide you with that information. You have questions?
Thanks so much, Marcy. Councillor Solda and then Councillor Paulson for questions to start.
Hi, Marcy. Long time no talk to, no see, and it's nice to see you. What I have a question is, are you going to ask, there's a lot of people that are working, single people and that, they're working, but they still are homeless because they can't, there's no affordable housing. Will you be asking that question at all? Thank you.
Yes, there is a question on the survey regarding the reasons for homelessness. And there is opportunity for people to identify if they just cannot afford or if there is not adequate housing for them.
Well, that's good, because there's a lot of people I've heard that are not, they are working, but they just don't have housing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Solda. There's been such an extreme lack of housing availability that, yeah, that's definitely an issue. I've heard about it in the community as well. Councillor Paulson and then Councillor Poon.
Hi, Marcy. Thanks for your presentation. And just while I'm sitting here thinking April the 7th is your date, I'm just wondering if you might include in that information and organizational capabilities moving forward with regards to the COVID vaccine for these people. And some of these people may not have phones or access to phones to even make appointments for vaccines when their age groups come up. So I'm just wondering if during this survey you might be able to facilitate or let the people know educationally how to move forward with COVID vaccines and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Marcy, if you want to add any comment on that, you're welcome to.
Thank you. Is not something that has come up so far, but if there was a information sheet, a quick one pager, it is certainly something that we could pass out. In terms of the survey itself, we already are in the habit of passing out incentives for people to fill out the survey. So we have masks and granola bars this year for individuals to receive in exchange for their time. So I think that that would be very suitable, and I can get in touch with Alicia Pauling to see if there's any good leads on that.
Great, thank you. Councillor Poon and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I just wonder, is there a general trend? Is homelessness on the up or on the down? And, you know, what sort of predictions do you have for this year's count?
I think that it is fairly safe to say that homelessness and housing challenges are on the rise. We know that there is a significant lack of affordable housing in most communities across BC. I think that with the challenges of the past year, that has certainly been exemplified. It's really been, it's been a challenging year for anybody who had any sort of barrier to begin with. So we are definitely anticipating a rise. And then I think additionally to that, yeah, with the extended count, I believe that we'll see a little bit of extra anyways. So in 2020, I anticipated that we would have seen a rise anyways because of the extended count. It is hard to capture that population in 24 hours, but I assume with the extended count this year, it'll be even more so, as well as the situations surrounding this year. And then outreach workers' anecdotes have also very much identified a growing trend and a lot of additional barriers faced by anybody who had, you know, some sort of vulnerability leading up to this year.
Thank you, Marcy. Councillor Haggard and then Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Marcy, I look forward to the results of the survey. I think those numbers that you'll be presenting to us, the final homeless count combined with the housing needs assessment that was presented to us at our last council meeting, I think with both of those two reports combined will give council a really good direction on what we need to do in the future for additional housing for the community. Thanks.
Thank you. And yeah, I would just add to that, I think that it gives us an opportunity to look at the number of housing starts that we have for specifically designated affordable and supportive housing that is coming to the community already, to really put some context to how much more is needed at this time. Okay, seeing no other questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Solda.
Just one more question. There's people out there that have chosen not to go to shelters, to other places of residence. They prefer to be on the outside because the rules are not there and everything. Are you going to be asking that question too? Because there are some people that don't want to follow the rules in the society.
Yes. So that
Good.
question is included in the survey. And then additionally, I think that this survey really does come from a housing first principle, which recognizes that there is a variety of solutions and options required in order to look at homelessness in any one community. So I think that there is enough depth in the survey to give you some additional information around what kinds of opportunities that might look like.
And some variety of reasons from the participant why they don't want to go to these shelters in different areas.
Yes.
Super. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Marcy, well, thank you very much for taking the time to present today. And I think we're very much looking forward to seeing the results of the work that you're doing. Okay. Thanks so much for coming. And we will move on to our next delegation, which is President Crystal Knudsen from the Rotary Club of Port Alberni, in attendance to provide information regarding plans for the community-wide cleanup on April 17th. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. So you have the letter already, I hope, that indicates that the Rotary Club of Port Alberni. Awesome. Thank you. The Rotary Club of Port Alberni is really interested in having a community cleanup day on Saturday, April the 17th. And we'd love it if we got to do this every year, and over time it became really big. But this is our first year that we're going to be doing this, as long as the city gives us permission to do it. It's brand new to us, so we just thought first place we want to reach out to is the city.
Wonderful. Thank you, Crystal. Well, I would say that we are very excited to see a local group looking to spearhead this initiative. And, there's over time absolutely been some community cleanups organized by different groups, but something with continuity would be fantastic. And I think over time, maybe not this year in the same kind of capacity that we normally would see, but I think we'll see this type of initiative becoming very successful. Dawn, I see that you're on as well. Did you have something to add? Oh, Dawn, you're muted. If There we go.
Sorry about that. I was basically giving support to Crystal. This is Crystal's first presentation to council. And I just thought it would be nice to, if she could see my face anyway, it might give her a little bit of extra confidence.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Dawn. I will turn it over to council if there's any questions. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, in the past, we've given groups and local organizations bags and gloves and stuff like that. We could still do that as part of our donation to this great cause. Is that possible?
Yeah, I don't see why not. If there's supplies and things that we can add, then I'm sure council would likely be happy to do that. Tim's popping up. Tim, what would you like to add?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Solda is remembering previous years, I'm sure. If the Rotary Group would like to, if council supports this initiative, then the next step would be for us to connect the Rotary Group with our Municipal Works leadership team, and then we can talk about what we can do to support.
Thank you.
Thanks, that would be great. Other questions or comments from council? Okay, Councillor Solda, would you like to read the motion provided? And you are muted.
Madam Mayor, I move that the council support the Rotary Club of Port Alberni Community-wide Cleanup Day scheduled Saturday, April 17th, 2021, on the condition that all activities proposed meet Island Health's requirements and recommendations in relation to COVID-19 pandemic. And also, can I include that they talk, or we'll just let it go and let them talk to city regarding supplies?
Yeah, I think we're probably okay to not specifically include the supplies, just with the
Okay.
general understanding that we'll support with supplies if needed. Is
Okay.
there a seconder for that?
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Corbeil. Any other comments? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And don't forget the high vis vest because you're going to be on the streets and stuff. And you need all the help you can get when you're out on the roads these days.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And I just want to thank you for coming forward and for organizing this initiative. We are very excited to see this take place. And recognizing, you know, we have to put special, as whatever special requirements in place that we need to this year due to COVID to ensure safety. We certainly want to support in whatever way we can. So thanks again for coming forward and thanks for presenting to council.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on then to our third delegation today, which is Randy Fraser from Build the Pool Society. Welcome, Randy. And Randy, you are muted. Still muted.
Sorry,
Oh,
I
there we
think I
go.
got her now. Yep.
Wonderful, Randy. Go ahead.
Good. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Under normal circumstances, I would be presenting to you the petition and comments in a council chambers, hopefully with a few supporters. But these aren't normal times, and so requires things to be done obviously virtually. So you already have the petition signatures and the comments that were provided in the agenda. And certainly, I hope you've had a chance to read and review them and look at the 1,500 plus signatures. Now, just to clarify, the first guy who signed twice did so accidentally, so I wasn't trying to stuff the signature petition. And the second person to sign is Marie from San Jose. Well, she usually lives here with me 6 months a year, but unfortunately, she got stuck on the other side of the border. So I consider her a half-time resident, so she put her name on there too. So this petition gives you a good sense of how important the pool is and how much a new one is needed and would mean to the community. Today, I'm not here just to present to you the petition and the comments, but to encourage you to focus on the pool replacement and save the reserves fund for it. Currently, you're planning to spend $3.5 million of reserves for the Key to Key path. And as I pointed out last week, 1.6 of that money comes from the Parks and Rec Reserve Fund that was not set up for projects like this. I mean, I think the whole Key to Key project has been, I would say, probably rushed and just sort of not really thought through. You know, when it first came out, you know, advertising for it was, you know, a beautiful picture of the boardwalk at Victoria Key with the river and the marina in the background with the sunset. The write-up was great about enhancing the quality of life, creating nodes for Indigenous people, looping connections, connecting neighborhoods, encouraging activity, and highlighting the city's waterfront. That was all before it was planned and it had a designated route. So, and I wrote to council last January 12th about questioning the path's route and its safety. And that's when the CAO mentioned that they just drew that route out in order to get into the funding game. And that's the only access you really had for the path at that time. But now you've hired a consulting engineer to help negotiate legal agreements, I guess, with private landowners and to try to develop a route around the mill. So when you look at getting from Victoria Key to Harbor Key, there's only a small stretch that you may access through the sand group along the waterfront. But otherwise, you basically have to go around the mill. So really, you're not near the waterfront as advertised, and you're not able to offer all that was in the write-up. So, and Madam Mayor, you mentioned in a recent post that talking about the pool that a $25 to $30 million project requires planning, proper diligence before moving forward. So I'm kind of like, how about a 7.5 million project from Key to Key? You don't have a designated route. You got no design, no real costs, and we haven't had any public input. So the project was sold first before it was even developed. And so, but also you want to earmark millions of dollars for it too at this time. So it's just one of those projects that I don't think the city should really plan multi-million-dollar projects this way. So these big ticket items and projects that aren't regulated by legislation, as in water and sewer, I mean, they should really be looked at as far as their importance, value, and benefit it offers the community. So is the key to key important? Well, is it something we really need? It should certainly be a nice want if you could get around the waterfront. But if it wasn't built, what impact would it have on the community? And it wouldn't change anything, really. What would its value be to us? Would give maybe a little more, as I say, a little more walking along the waterfront. How many people would really want to walk key to key that you have to go around the mill? And the winters here are long and cold and can be wet. So how many people would actually be out there walking during the wintertime, 4 or 5 months of the year? You probably wouldn't get that many. And so how does that benefit the community? Well, is it really enhancing the quality of life? Is it highlighting the waterfront? Well, not really if we have to go around the mill. But also you posted that it would, about the key to key path, there was never a better time to invest in outdoor recreation, health in our community. The path has really no parks or no playground areas to do things like that. It's just a walking path. And I guess if we really want it, I just start thinking, if you really want to invest in the outdoor recreation, especially for kids, right? We should be really looking at getting the playground equipment back into the playgrounds that it was all removed from last year. And so with the reduction in the hours of operation of the pool from the pandemic, it just showed how important the pool is and the impact it has on the citizens. How important is the pool? Well, it's a 54-year-old, just a plain old pool. And, it's used for swim lessons. You had a swim club. People use it for exercise. Seniors use it for therapy. And so it's kind of really important because it's also used by the whole region. And if it was to shut down, it affects the whole region of the area. So it has a huge impact on people's lives. Now, what if it was a modern facility with all the amenities that we look for today, right? Your leisure pools, fun zones for kids, water slide, leisure pools, all the family stuff. All new facilities that have been built have seen dramatic increases in admissions. That increases its value. Exercising is easier for seniors because they have level entry, the warmer water and leisure pools. It's more activities for families and kids to do, especially in the wintertime. Most winters here, like I say, are long and cold. So it gives kids something to do. It gives families something to do. And it certainly becomes more active. It encourages people to be more active and get out. And I'm certainly, it would also attract a lot of people from the West Coast. The benefits of a new facility are enormous for kids, families, seniors, and the community in the region. And as you did also mention, it'll be something this community could be proud of for decades. Now, we're going to do another study on the Aquatic Center, with the regional district. So this is going to, I say it has to be a regional effort, and we all know that, right? So the biggest, as I said before, this is a city initiative, and this is what the city should be the driver of this project. And so I've had some lengthy conversations with Mark Van Eyck and Cascadia Stone McDonald Architects, who did the first report. And Mark Van Eyck is a construction management company, and Scott used them because he oversaw the multiplex, and he knew getting them involved in the pool. And it's very good because those guys start from beginning to end. So you don't end up with running to huge cost overruns, right? If you just tender the project, let somebody oversee it. So I've had some discussion with them because numbers have been thrown around. 50 million, 40 million, everybody makes up a number sometimes to scare people. So just for apples to apples, the old pool, the option 6 of the pool, the last report was just around $17 million. That same pool today is going to cost you $26 million. So now we know what we can talk about, right? And out of that 26, you probably will get a third funding. That's what you hope for, right? So now it's what's left for the taxpayer. So how much do we really need to burden the taxpayer? And the key to success is getting as low as and affordable for the taxpayers as we can. Now, when the report is done, right, is council going to be sort of ready to sort of hit the deck running when this report comes back this year? Or do we have to sit and, how are we going to do this? How are we moving forward? Is it going to sit on the shelf again? So, and previous councils have never, it's not just here. We're sort of at this time and we just have to deal with it as a group and as a community. Councils before should have been using reserves more stringently, I guess I'd say, not like an ATM machine, but they should have been thinking ahead too, but we haven't. So, this is where we are. But there's so much that could be started right now in the process, right? I mean, the funding opportunities are going to be out there. You start reaching out to corporations for contributions. We have to get First Nations involvement. You start to think about facility, selling the sale facility naming, doing donations, sponsorships. We have to start negotiating with the regional district what their share is going to be and how this is going to shake out. These things take a little bit of time. So I think the sooner we get on them, the sooner we can get moving. And of course, I'll say, and you harp over this again, you need to save your reserves. So the 3.5 million you have that you're going to use this year, if you put that with the 2 million community, you're already at 5.5 million. So we just need to save a little bit more to try to get that third balance in. And I say, the more reserves we have, the lower the cost comes down for the taxpayers. And that's the ultimate sale job when we go to referendum. What can they afford? And we should be looking as hard as we can to save as much as we can. And I know it's a tough job and we may require a sacrifice, right? But everybody needs to work together to move that forward. So I would just say, by definition, one of council's main responsibility is to consider the well-being and interests of the municipality and the community. An aquatic center is one of your most expensive and one of your most important facilities. It offers so much value and benefit, and this one needs to be replaced. The city needs to be working as hard as it can to accomplish that, including saving as much money as you can. The loss of the pool would have a huge negative impact on the community. A new modern aquatic center would dramatically improve the benefits and well-being of the community. When you consider the well-being and interests of the community, I think an overwhelming amount of the community, through the emails, comments, and this petition, has made it very clear that a new aquatic center is the most important, valuable, and beneficial to them. So now the question now remains, is council willing to act? Thank you. That's my shtick.
Thank you, Randy. So I'll make a couple comments and then I'll pass it along to council if anyone else wishes to say anything. Is council willing to act? Yes, we are. Yes. Council is very excited about the potential of a new pool. We've had many conversations about it. You've made a comment specifically that, negotiating with the ACRD will take time on who's going to pay what. Those conversations have already started. They started about 1.5 years ago. So they do take time, absolutely. From council's perspective, we have been working very hard to let the ACRD lead on this. And I want to appreciate that the ACRD is leading on this. They are driving this forward and we are participating as we should as a part of the regional district. I don't believe that it's okay for us to drive what the pool is going to be and then tell somebody else to pay for it. That would be like me saying, I want a new pool, let's get Parksville to pay for it. It doesn't make sense. If we want the regional district to be equal partners in this, we need to let them be a part of the planning. So that's what we're doing. And I recognize that you're not saying to not do that. But that's what we're doing. And we probably haven't communicated as well as we could have the steps that we have taken on the pool to date, but I'm quite happy with where we're at today. And the feasibility study is a significant step forward. And the fact that the regional district is doing that instead of the city is a significant step. We all want a new pool. And I will say that, but as soon as we start talking numbers about a pool, we're going to also hear from all the people in the community who don't want to pay for a new pool. And, I'm sure we can all recognize that there's no one project that we can do that would satisfy everybody. But I do believe that a majority of people want a new pool. And I believe that a majority of council absolutely wants to push forward for a new pool. The work is in making sure that it is funded and paid for equitably. And I don't believe that the 17,000 people who happen to live within city limits should pay 100% of the cost of an asset that will cost a significant amount and will service 30,000 people who live in this valley. So we have been patient. We have been waiting. We have been waiting for the regional district to be ready to have the conversation. The good thing is they are now ready and we are moving forward with the feasibility study. The study that was done 10 years ago is a great starting point. And as you and I have discussed, it is, it will absolutely form part of the work that is done with the new feasibility study. But again, if we want the regional district taxpayers and residents to be equal partners in this project, then we need to consult them. We need to give them an opportunity for public input to determine if this is as much of a priority for them as it is for us. So again, I'm quite happy with where we're at right now. I do note that you spent quite a bit of your time today talking about the path, and I fully am aware that you're not a supporter of us using funds for the path. I also note that your petition didn't talk about the path. So the signatures that you got that you're representing today are not signatures against a path. Some of them absolutely are going to be, but your petition calls for us to build the pool. And I know a lot of the people who signed your petition are fully supportive of us exploring the path as well. And the last thing I will note is that, Randy, you referenced my comment about proper planning for large projects, and I absolutely agree with that and believe it. I said it. The path is going to be properly planned as well. We are not taxing any money for the path this year. We still have public engagement to do. We still have planning to do. The point that we're at right now, and we've been very clear about this, is submitting a grant application to try to not let a $2.5 million opportunity pass by. There is much work to do on the path, as there is on the pool still, and we will do that work over time. We will not spend, spend $1.6 million without having done that work. So you've made some good points, and your message is heard. Thank you. Councillor Corbeil, and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, as you said, I would think that all of council wants to see the pool built. And it's not only building a pool, it's maintaining the pool. And as you point out, the regional district seems to be leading this project. And hopefully this time we'll get something built and we'll have some sort of agreement on how it's maintained going forward. Randy poo-pooed the heck out of the key to key. I suggest you go down to the dike walkway today in the middle of winter and see if there's anybody walking around it. And they're just going around a little creek. That gets an awful lot of activity. Lastly, Randy, I see people sign your petition from Toronto and Hamilton and Abbotsford and Denman Island. Do you know if they're willing to chip in for our pool?
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. And again, Randy, I think we very much recognize, even for me, without the petition, I recognize that the pool is a priority. So, to me, it doesn't matter where the people are who have signed it. We're all very supportive of moving forward with a pool, just like the people who have signed your petition. I have Councillor Haggard, Councillor Solda, and then Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I really appreciate your enthusiasm, Randy. But I just want to point out a couple of things as well. The last 2 years have been really difficult for our community. First of all, we had to endure the longest forestry strike in the history of our province, which really affected hundreds of people in our community. And then we had COVID hit, which really left all levels of government trying to figure out how to continue delivering services. And that includes the city of Port Alberni. There was no book to follow. We were literally writing the book along, and it really stretched our city resources very thin. So in order to take on the big project of doing a new pool, just wasn't feasible at that time. And I really realized the value of a new aquatic center, but you have to realize that all these major initiatives have really sort of been put on hold, but it never left our minds. It was always at the forefront of our minds to push forward, and now we are moving forward. So I think that's all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. Councillor Solda.
Yeah, Randy, I thought you did an amazing job on the presentation. So thank you for presenting that. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of parents who take their kids to Nanaimo. I have taken my grandson to Nanaimo to the fun zone in the pools and stuff like that. And it would be great to have it here. I applaud your enthusiasm. I definitely see our doing a pool regionally. the updated study. We definitely need an updated study. We also need the regional on board as well as the public on board, which obviously we do have the public. I remember the multiplex when it was being presented to the public and how many people said they would never go into the multiplex. And I've had people come up and said, hey, I've never been in there because they weren't happy with the build. Echo Center, when it was built, I heard the same stories, never going into the Echo Center, never, 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 because they didn't agree with it. And you know what? They're the baby boomers and everybody else that are now going into the Echo Center. So we're going to get a lot of that. I'm not doing this, I'm not. And then there's people that say, why should I pay for it? I'm never going to go use the pool. And they say that about the school system. Why am I paying into the school? Because I don't have kids that go to school. Well, they did at one time or another. So it's just getting everybody on board, getting all the pieces together. I think we have to look at the old study and update it to what we have now, because we have a different demographics than we did when it was first presented to council. And Scott Kenny, you know, when he made that presentation and came up and said we should have some money because we want to have a study ready. So when those grants came out, that we need to be ready. And I agree with you. So this is what's happening with the regional district. So thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. Councillor Paulson.
Randy, thanks for your presentation. And I just want to reiterate a couple of things. First of all, the theory or philosophy behind new aquatic centers as opposed to what we own now. And the new modern facilities actually do have the fun zones and the play zones, which enables a pool to open to the public on almost a 24-hour-a-day drop-in basis, and which increases revenue. I would suspect that new pools, the recovery rate is greater than our pool is. Let's put it that way. The ACRD is heading this. They will be instituting a new feasibility study. I just want to make sure that we as council and we as a community ensure that the expertise of our Parks and Recreation staff is available to the ACRD as they move forward on the study. And that goes without saying, but I just want to make sure that people know that's something going on. And the other thing that Councillor Solda brought up is, and I went through this when I was involved with the Arena Society, as people said, I don't want a rink, I never use it, or I'll never go into it. And I get that me philosophy or feeling, but I think that if people look at the overall benefit to the community as a whole, the social enterprise, the ability for families to gather and congregate, be healthy, it's not just about the individual, it's about the community as a whole. And that's kind of the philosophy we took with the multiplex. And I just wanted to comment on that. There are people who probably never will go in, but their neighbors will. And why would we defy the neighbors the ability to have fun with their family or recreate with their families and be healthy? Anyway, that's just a couple of thoughts. I had some other thoughts, but old age.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. Councillor Poon or Councillor Washington, any comments?
Not at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Poon. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a comment to think, I think we're doing the right thing. I'd rather see an aquatic center based on a population of 30,000 rather than an aquatic center based on a population of 17,000. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And Randy, I do want to thank you for the work that you've done in advocating for this project. And as you and I, said when we met a couple weeks ago, what we are in agreement on absolutely is that the Aquatic Center is of the utmost importance to our community. Like I said, I do believe that when we get serious in these conversations and the public engagement starts to happen from the regional district, we will absolutely hear from those people who don't want to pay for the Aquatic Center either. But I do believe that this is a project in the best long-term interest of our community. And I think we'll hear that from the taxpayers. So I'm excited to be taking a step forward on it. I think this is a significant step, and at least in part, I would say, due to your work, getting the community engaged about it. So thank you for coming today and for your work in bringing this project up. Thanks. Okay, Council, we will move on to unfinished business, and we have one item from the Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage, follow up to correspondence received at the January 25th regular meeting of Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just following up on anticoagulant rodenticides. So in Port Alberni, we currently use that approach to combat our rodent population. And so at this stage, the challenge is that the only alternative at this point are snap traps. And so the United States is currently exploring alternatives, but there's no new technology imminent on the horizon that we're aware of. And for Council's awareness, switching to snap traps would provide a variety of challenges. First would be our costs would increase exponentially, since the current system only requires a technician on site monthly to check the bait traps and refresh as needed. Secondly, any traps that are tripped will be unavailable until they're reset. And thirdly, we could see rapid growth in the rodent population, as the bait traps don't just kill the rodent that takes the bait, the rodent also brings the bait back to their dens. So at this point, staff would recommend to Council that we monitor what action our colleagues on the island take, and when an effective option arises, we look to take some similar action.
Thank you very much for that. Council, any questions? Councillor Poon.
Thank you for that. I just wondered, is it possible to use both, a combination of poison as well as snap traps?
Yep, Madam Mayor, we could use any combination of devices that we see appropriate here in our community.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, Councillor Poon, would you like to move receipt of the verbal update?
I'll move receipt.
Thank you. I'll second that. All in favor? Carried. Thanks for the information. Okay, and staff reports. Item 1 is accounts. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the certification of the Director of Finance dated March 8, 2021 be received, and checks numbering 148094 to 148169 inclusive, and payments totaling $652,021.58 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And item number 2 from the Director of Corporate Services, appointment of approving officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there's a resolution on the agenda for Council's consideration with the resignation of our manager of planning, who was appointed by Council and acting as the city's approving officer. We are looking to Council to fill that role, and the motion in front of you is to suggest that that appointment be Mr. Smith, our recent Director of Development Services and Deputy CAO.
Thank you. Councillor Soldo, would you like to read that motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that the Council for the City of Port Alberni appoint Scott Smith, Director of Development Services, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, as well as City's statutory approving officer, effective immediately in accordance with the requirements of the Land Title Act.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Paulson. Are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And item number 3 from the Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage, Ammonia Safety Awareness Program.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So after an operational interruption at the city-owned multiplex in November 2019, the city committed to being a leader in the field of ammonia safety at municipal facilities. Staff have since actively participated with Technical Safety BC, who is our regulator of our ammonia program at the multiplex, in the creation of a safety awareness program. And we're very pleased to have the multiplex included in the first group of facilities to participate in this initiative. So the initiative actually started today, and the finalized program is expected to be available across BC in 2021.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from Council? Councillor Haggard.
Madam Mayor, not a question, but a comment. I'm always saying that in every crisis, there is opportunity. So I really want to thank the staff for taking a crisis and creating this opportunity to be a leader in the province and having other rinks look to us as a model to follow. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for saying that, Councillor Haggard. Okay, with that, I don't think we need to move receipt of these verbal updates. We usually do, but maybe our Director of Corporate Services could give us her opinion on whether we need to or not.
You are correct, Madam Mayor. A motion to receive the verbal reports or reports for information is not required.
Thank you. Okay, then we will move on to item number 4 from the Chief Administrative Officer, grant opportunities for March of 2021.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council, you're likely well aware that there are unprecedented numbers of grant opportunities coming through to us, and this report outlines 4 that for which staff are seeking your direction on. The report that I'm sure you've all looked at does mention that does speak to the fact that grant opportunities can be a distraction because they take a lot of time and staff effort, sometimes contractor resources to prepare a competitive application. And many of these funds are oversubscribed by 4 and 5 times. So they are competitive. And so we can find ourselves in a bit of a scramble pursuing grant opportunities if they're not aligned well, or if the projects for which we're applying don't align well with our strategic agenda. And so with that in mind, and the very tight timelines on these 4 that are before you now, we are proposing some projects for which we suggest that the city could benefit from making applications for funding for, and that we're confident that we can submit competitive applications for in the short time span. This report was originally drafted February 25th. This has been a very fluid situation, and so some of the circumstances have changed somewhat since this report was written. I'd like to counsel for you to hear from Pat Deacon, Economic Development Manager, because he is writing grant applications for us, and Pat can speak specifically to the 4 opportunities and the 4 recommended motions. And if you have questions, if Pat can't answer them, then some other staff members should be able to.
Thank you. Go ahead whenever you're ready, Pat.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the report does outline the opportunities that we have in front of us and what we're proposing to do by way of applications. The 2 that are most critical, of course, are the Canada Healthy Communities funding opportunities. Although there are 2 intakes on that, the first deadline is tomorrow at 5 p.m. And the second intake begins on June 25th. And I'm reluctant to be applying for an opportunity at that point in time because we wouldn't receive information or about the status of our grant application until sometime in September, which would be too late to move forward with a project of creating a vibrant, healthy, safe harbor quay. And that's what we're proposing to do with that project. The second opportunity that has an imminent deadline is the one with the Island Coastal Economic Trust and their business and community recovery program. And essentially it is an opportunity to hire temporary staff for a period of time to address issues that the business community is facing in Port Alberni. And again, with that, there is a second intake of April the 9th. but I've spoken to the trust, and that second intake deadline was actually put in place for smaller communities than us that don't have any economic development resources and are going to need the time to pull an application together. And they're expecting that the larger communities like ourselves will be able to get an application in by the 12th, which is Friday of this week. And they have also advised us that based on the feedback that they've had and the inquiries they've had, that the program will be oversubscribed. So again, I'm wanting to move forward with an application on our behalf that would bring 2 people into place for full-time employment for 6 or 7 months each. They would be dedicated to working with the small business community and with the nonprofit organizations to ensure that they have each applied for every provincial, federal, and regional grant opportunity that they're eligible for. We are proposing to have them work through the Chamber of Commerce. I've spoken to Community Futures about this opportunity. They've said that their preference would be that they would harness their consulting hive, individuals that are working with them to address the needs of the small business community, that we would harness the members of the consulting hive with the 2 individuals that would be hired there. So I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions before moving forward with respect to the other opportunities.
Thanks, Pat. Start with Councillor Washington and then Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Deacon, something in my head twigs that we did, or somebody did a similar survey around Christmas time with the small business people. Was that something that came from the city, or was that something that came from somewhere else?
Thank you, Councillor. It was actually the city convened a team of the Community Futures, the Chamber of Commerce, the Port Authority, and a few weeks after we'd done that, the Alberni Valley Employment Center joined the team. And we did a full phone survey in March of last year when the pandemic broke. We subsequently did a phone call to all of the restaurants in the community to let them know about the city's willingness to allow them to utilize public space for operations. And then we did a survey, an online survey of the business community, of individuals that were seeking employment, and of the general public, the consumers, to ask questions about how they were doing. The sense that we are still getting, and admittedly some of it is anecdotal, but it's after consultations with each of Community Futures, the Chamber, and the Port Authority, and some individual businesses. The sense that we're getting is some of the businesses have not applied for grants that they're eligible for. So the purpose of getting this team out is to go door to door, or if that's not appropriate, given COVID, to phone every business again and get an understanding of what grants they've applied for and whether they're aware of the full suite of grant opportunities. And if they are not, we would then work with them to get an application in on their behalf. One of the programs that has just been extended, small and medium enterprise business recovery program, originally slated to end at the end of March, has now been pushed to the end of August. We believe that, for example, there are businesses that haven't applied to that and weren't going to apply because we're already 1 week into March. So the intent is to do everything we can to ensure the survival of the small and medium enterprise businesses in the community.
Yeah, thanks for that, Pat. And I think that you're right. There are many businesses that have not applied to some of the grant opportunities yet. Myself and Deb were at the Harbor Key and met with at least one business owner down there who wasn't aware and has now applied. And we were intending to go down and have conversations with a couple others that we had heard had not applied. It would be great to have somebody really intentionally reaching out. There are opportunities for grants already that have come and gone, like Canada United Small Business Grant is over for BC now. And there's just been so much news happening. And I think that a lot of people, businesses, owners are missing opportunities. So I think this is a worthwhile initiative, especially because not only are some programs being extended, but some of the qualifications have changed over time as well. The program that you referenced being one that has had the guidelines change since it was first put into effect. So really happy to see this initiative coming forward. Councillor Paulson. Oh, sorry, go ahead if you have another comment, Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pardon me, but is this opportunity, is it 100% funded by ICE-T?
Yes. So each of the initiatives that I've just spoken about, the Canada Healthy Communities grant and the ICE-T Business and Community Recovery, are 100% funded. The beauty of the latter is that there's no opportunity to find ourselves in a situation where we start into a project and then realize that it's going to require more funding than we had originally anticipated. And with that, Community Futures did say to us that they would put the members of the consulting hive at our disposal, so that if the team of two that were working with the community were finding themselves getting overwhelmed with the number of applications that they were trying to support, that the consulting hive would step in. So 100% funded.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Pat, thank you so much for the work that you're doing on these grant apps. I know that they're very onerous at times and take a lot of time. I'm just wondering about point number 2 with regards to the Harbor Key. I wonder if you could expand a little bit for myself and maybe anybody who's watching on the vision for that. And also the first 2 grants that we're talking about, are there dollar values that are attached to the application?
I'll answer the last question first, if I may. So the ICE-T grant is up to $70,000. And that's one-time funding. And the objective is to create temporary employment for initiatives that would support the small business community. The Creating Healthy Communities grant is 100% funding for projects in 3 categories. And the minimum application they will take is for a project of $5,000, and the maximum application is for a project of $250,000. And what we are proposing to do at Harbor Key is to involve the community in painting murals on the maritime building, or sorry, on the marine building. The marine building is the one that houses the businesses from the donut shop through to the gift shop. And so we did, you may remember that we applied to Island Coastal Economic Trust for a small cap capital project back in the late summer. And we did receive approval for some items there, notably new tents, new picnic tables, some new dispensers of sanitizer. I've spoken to the trust, the staff at the trust, and said, here's where we're at with that project. Here's what we're proposing to add in by way of our application to the Healthy Communities project. Are you okay with it? And the answer was yes, we are okay, because in their minds, the project that they had originally approved, which were improvements to help the merchants get through the COVID distancing measures and improve safety down there, was a total $44,000 project. And we, although we don't have the final numbers in at the moment, we're anticipating that the mural project, the repainting of the marine building, will probably be $125,000. And Ice-T's view is this is fantastic. Our funds have leveraged $170,000 project, their $15,000 contribution. While I'm talking about Ice-T, Councillor Washington did forward a note to the Director of Finance and myself about the Ice-T's economic infrastructure program, recovery program, and specifically about revitalization. Port Alberni actually created the mold for that form of funding, because we were the first community to apply for an uptown revitalization grant. And they ended up deciding that they were going to have to develop a policy for communities, because they recognized if they approved Port Alberni, every community north of the Malahat would be looking for a revitalization grant of that sort. So their policy became one time only. And if you go to the ICT site and click on that program and click on examples of projects that have been funded, you will see that we are there. Having said that, I will go back to ICT and ask if they're ready to change their policy up on that.
I don't think that they are. At a recent board meeting for the North Island Committee of ICT that I sit on, that topic was discussed because there were other communities who had already accessed that funding who were wondering about accessing it again. I think at some point likely it will be changed, but I don't think we should anticipate it anytime in the near future. Pat, I'm wholly supportive of the concept of improving the Harbor Quay with paint and flowers and these types of initiatives. I'm wondering where the concept of murals down there came from.
It actually came from one of the merchants. So, okay. We have toyed with the idea of murals previously. Councillor Paulson will remember an occasion when the aquarium first got created on the site. He had asked why we didn't do some more colorful painting on there. And at that point in time, there was a suggestion for doing a large mural across the entire roof of the marine building. And that actually came from the merchants group that were meeting regularly with Parks, Recreation, and Heritage. More recently, the idea for the mural came from one of the business owners down there. I think it was partly a recognition of the life or the vibrancy that the Rotary mural on the side of the Canadian Maritime Engineering building has created. I saw I took in part of a very interesting session at the BC Economic Development Association Summit this morning called For the Love of Cities. And the speaker spoke and provided photos of mural projects in several communities that had revitalized those communities. So we would also be adding more lights.
Okay. I have some concern about painting a mural down there. My issue with murals is that they look beautiful when they are done, and then very quickly they fade. They are often not taken care of, and very quickly they end up looking old and tired. I think the Harbor Quay building in the state that it's in right now is a great example, a visual example of how a mural might look over time. It looks tired and faded. It has not been, painted as frequently as it should have been. And frankly, in the 6 years I've been on council, we've had the conversation about why can't we just paint the Harbor Quay building about 8 times? And we've never gotten to doing it. So I'm concerned that if we paint a mural on one of those buildings, we will keep having the conversation about, oh, it needs to be improved, or why can't we paint it? And we just won't get to it. In all the time I've been on council and through a number of initiatives, I've seen it suggested like a bright and colorful theme for Harbor Quay. The chamber has suggested it. The branding committee that we looked at quite a few years ago, that myself and Councillor Haggard were on, along with yourself and a few other people. We talked about painting the Harbor Quay in bright colors. So I think the concept of a mural is catching me reasonably off guard. And I just very much worry that if we paint a mural, it's not going to look good for long. So you know, I don't feel like this is a decision that should be necessarily made today. If the grant application is submitted, does it commit us to a mural, or could it still be just a painted color scheme, if that was the decision?
Sorry, I should have clarified. So the idea was to paint the Marine building, but to paint the murals on aluminum panels like what has been done in the pool. And the murals on those aluminum panels would be installed on the fence at the back of the Marine building and at places on the Marine building, but not completely covering it.
Okay, that gives me much more comfort, and assuming the whole Marine building itself would be painted still.
Yes.
I think for me, that's a critical piece of submitting this. Councillor Haggard, I'm sure, is going to talk about also wanting to paint the Marine building, but it just is something that's been talked about for so long, and we've seen other buildings in the community painted, and I think we all very much want to see this project get done. Councillor Haggard, and then I think Councillor Solda had a comment as well.
Pat, when you said you're going to paint the Marine building, if I could, I would give you a big kiss right now. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Solda.
I had the same concerns as you, Madam Mayor. As you know, I love murals, I really do, but they have to have some kind of money behind them for upkeep because they do get old and tired. So yeah, I was going to ask, where did the murals come from? Because I don't remember discussing it, although I'm a big component on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this part? And then it looks like this is all, we could do this as two separate motions. So we could vote on the first two and then go to the next two. Okay, seeing no comments. Councillor Corbeil, would you like to read these first motions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to prepare and submit applications for funding as follows. 1, Island Coastal Economic Trust Rural Business and Community Recovery Program for support of a program that will provide funding for temporary employment, support business and community economic recovery and resilience in advance of the application deadline of March 12th, 2021. And 2, Government of Canada Healthy Communities Initiative for improvements that will create a safe and vibrant public space at Harbour Quay in Port Alberni in advance of the application deadline of March 9th, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Poon. Any further conversation on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Pat. Okay, and Pat, are you speaking to the next two as well?
I can, Madam Mayor. The first, the UBCM Strengthening Community Services was a fund we were aware was coming into being, and we had thought it would be a perfect fit for the renovations that are going to be required for the community policing station, the newly acquired building on 3rd Avenue that the city has. When the grant was announced, we got all excited and then saw in the fine print that major renovations are not an eligible expense. And we have asked for and then received just before the council meeting today a definition of a minor renovation. And the definition is certainly not going to provide the funding that we were looking for, the $340,000 or $50,000 that we were looking for the renovations there. So that is something that we will need to reconsider. The application deadline for that one, though, fortunately, is April 16th. So we have some time to consider what we bring forward. And then the last grant application was the one put forward by Tourism Vancouver Island, which was a targeted regional tourism development initiative. And what we were proposing to do there was build wayfinding signage for trails. And it has to be a regional project. Tourism Vancouver Island has confirmed that if we were to apply with or have a letter of support from the regional district, they would consider that a regional project. I think we're all aware that the Alberni Valley Search and Rescue Squad has been down into the Roger Creek watershed on several occasions over the last year, and that people have been lost on other trails. And so the intent is to build an application for wayfinding signage that would help people stay out of trouble.
Thank you. Can I just clarify if the regional district gave us a letter of support, would that mean that they would not be able to make their own application, or do we know?
I don't know, and I will double
Okay, I'm
check.
just thinking if that is the case, I think they would be unlikely to give us that support. Parks have become definitely more of a priority for the regional district in recent months, and I think it's a welcome shift that we are seeing a lot more focus on outdoor spaces in the regional area. I think that they will be looking to put in their own grant application for this, and rather than us try to pursue our own initiative and seek support from them, there might be an opportunity for us to put in a joint application for like the log train trail or something that spans all of our areas. So I would certainly support the initiative shown here, but it might be just worth a follow-up conversation with the regional district first to see if there's a joint opportunity or you know, a way that we wouldn't end up pushing forward and then not receiving their support. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from council? Okay, Councillor Solda, would you like to read the motions?
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move that the Union of BC Municipalities Strengthening Community Service Seeking Funding related to the minor public safety building renovations, bylaw services, operating costs, and contributions of the city service for temporary low barrier, is that the right ones?
Yep.
Low barrier housing solutions in the way of neighborhood and facility garbage collection. For Tourism Vancouver Island Targeted Regional Tourism Development Services funding opportunity for the purpose of supporting the creation of trail steering group to implement a signage and wayfinding systems for trails within the region.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Poon, and seeing no comments, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And thanks, Pat, for all your work on this. It is just continues to be shocking how many grant opportunities there are right now, but it's great to see us pursuing as many as possible. We have no bylaws today, so correspondence for action. Item number 1 is an email dated March 4th, 2021 from Mike Rattan on behalf of the Alberni Valley Low Energy Housing Society, requesting a letter of support to accompany their grant application to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Paulson.
I'm a director with the Low Energy Housing Society, so I should probably just step out while you're dealing with this request.
Absolutely, thanks. And sorry, I didn't think of that prior, but go ahead whenever you're ready. Okay, wonderful. And Council, are there any questions on this request for a letter of support? Councillor Poon.
Thank you. Do we know how many carports with solar panels that they plan to install?
Uh,
Oh,
Madam Mayor, may I jump in?
sure.
They are proposing to buy 229 solar panels.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor Poon?
I think more, I also wanted to know in terms of how many carports that they were planning to build. Was that part of their
Development
I guess,
application?
building permit or whatever?
Scott, are you able to speak to if that was a part of their development permit application?
So this is new, and they're applying for a grant for these solar panels. If they are successful, they would build carports over most of their parking area, and an amendment to the development permit would come forward to City Council prior to them proceeding. But they won't proceed unless they get the grant funding to install this. But they have spoken to us, and if they are successful, the carport design will come forward to council as part of their development permit or as an amendment to that development permit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, Councillor Washington, would you like to read this motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council provide a letter of support to the Alberni Low Energy Housing Society to accompany the grant application to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for the Maitland Street Village project.
Great. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Solda. And seeing no other comments, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you so much. And we'll just wait for Councillor Paulson to return. Welcome back, Councillor Paulson. Okay, and we'll move on to proclamations. We have one item from the Alberni Valley Hospice Society, a letter received March 1st requesting that the month of May 2021 be proclaimed as Hospice Palliative Care Month in the Alberni Valley. Would somebody like to make this motion? Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I move that the letter dated March 1st, 2021 from the Alberni Valley Hospice Society requesting that the council proclaim the month of May 2021 as Hospice Palliative Care Month be proclaimed as requested.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And correspondence for information.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we have 10 items on your summary, 3 of which are again expressing support for the new Aquatic Center, and that's 8, 9, and 10. Starting at the top, we have a copy of the letter for council's information that has been sent to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, which is requesting a meeting to talk about the financial impacts of the oil release as well as future operations of the mill. We have correspondence from Anita Sutherland regarding the welcome sign project, and in particular, the design concept that's been proposed. We have another letter in support of the welcome design submission from Susan Roth as presented to council at their February 8th meeting. We have an email from Minister Osborne, which provides an update on BC Parks and opening up to BC residents to make reservations today in advance of others from out of province. 2 emails from Aaron Breivik that are on the same topic, and it's just speaking to access of private forest lands. We have the submission that Joel Marriott had referenced when council was conducting their e-town hall, and this was the Owl's Path and their crosswalks. And then a copy of the letter that has been sent to government officials regarding the return to play pod concept.
Thank you. Are there any items councillors would like to highlight? Councillor Washington and then Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With that number 6 letter about lighting up the crosswalks, we've already got some kind of project going with ICBC. Am I not correct?
CAO.
Madam Mayor, I don't see Rob Dixon coming up on the screen. Yes, our engineering department is working with ICBC on a shared funding approach to intersection safety.
Thank you. And I was going to ask the same thing. I think that the submission that's been included here is a great concept, likely one of many concepts that are available. I think council is certainly, with the number of tragedies that have happened in our community over the last few years, council is certainly wanting to look at street and crosswalk lighting as a priority. And this may or may not be the answer to that, but I think just at least having it forwarded along to our engineering department, which I believe it has been, is a great start. And then they could possibly bring us some information on future steps. And Rob, I see you are on. If you have anything to add, you're welcome to.
I don't really have much to add. I'll just say that this is a great program to look at. Once we've identified appropriate intersections, then we can look at lighting as one of the solutions, and then we can talk to these folks once we have an idea of where we might be doing this.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, other items, Councillor Paulson?
Just a quick comment on the letter from Minister Osborne and opening up the reservation systems. Just in case we were wondering how desperate people are to get out of their houses and get outdoors, that reservation system crashed today. It was so heavily used. I don't know if it's up and running again, but just an observation.
I bet it did. Okay, thank you. If there's no other comments, I will move receipt of our correspondence summary dated March 8th, 2021.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Poon. Seeing no comments, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And we have no report from in camera today, so we do have council reports attached. Are there any items councillors would like to highlight? Okay, seeing none, would somebody like to move receipt? Councillor Paulson?
I just thought I would reiterate, and Madam Mayor, you might want to expound just on the regional district, the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee's recommendation to the directors as a whole with regards to the feasibility study, recommending $100,000 be applied to the feasibility study to move the project forward. And you may want to comment on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Just would love to. I think this is a super exciting and positive step forward. So this represents funding, and again, it is a recommendation from the committee, the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee. It does need full board approval, which I believe it's coming to our agenda this week, very soon, for full approval. But that said, this is a significant step. So the regional district would be taking on feasibility study to look at multiple options for a pool so that we know what the starting point would be. You know, multiple different levels of pools, in as well as probably what if we didn't replace the pool and what would that option look like. And then that will go to public engagement with the whole Alberni Valley. And I know that there's been a lot of conversation about, you know, a study was already done. Why do we have to keep doing studies? And as much as I typically really agree with the, you know, the frustration of doing numerous studies, this is one that I wholeheartedly support. If we are going to ask regional area taxpayers to help fund the pool, then they need to be consulted in what type of pool we as a whole region and a whole valley want to build. So we certainly can work from the study that was already completed, but the whole area needs to be engaged. It is so important. We can't ask the regional district residents to pay for something without giving them a say of what that something will look like and what type of price range we're looking at. So yeah, I would further just like to really thank the regional district directors for engaging with us on this issue. You know, Ron and I and prior Councillor Haggard, and prior to that, Councillor Solda, all four of us who have represented the city on the regional district board have been bringing this forward. And it's been really recently met with a very positive response from regional district directors. So I'm thrilled that we are taking this step and looking forward to having an opportunity for the whole valley to have a say. And give some input on what the future of the pool will look like. Councillor Solda?
Yeah, I agree with you, Madam Mayor. The 14, 15 years I sat on the board, it was no, 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 no. So it's really moving forward. 60% of it is from our funding though, right? We're doing 60% because we sit on the regional.
Yeah, so it would be a part of our budget that goes to the regional district. So that apportionment is being looked at because there is a couple different ways to apportion, either based on assessment or based on population. That will be coming to the board as part of the report. But the concept has been given preliminary approval from the committee.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments, Councillor Paulson, would you like to move receipt of council reports?
So move, Madam Mayor.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Poon. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And moving on to new business, and we will start with the Aquatic Center notice of motion provided by Councillor Solda. Go ahead, Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I'm just going to move the motion and then we can talk. Okay, I move that the Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to amend the City of Port Alberni 2021-2025 financial plan bylaw number 5023 to establish a contingency fund for the proposed purpose of reserving monies for the future replacement of Aquatic Center pool.
Second that.
Great, moved and seconded. And I don't think there will be a lot of conversation. Councillor Poon.
Thank you. Is this just to establish a contingency fund, but not to specify what goes in at this point?
Yeah, the motion is just to establish the fund as a point of getting started.
Okay, then I support it.
Okay, great. Okay, any other comments? Councillor Haggard.
Madam Mayor, do we not already have an existing Parks and Recreation Infrastructure Reserve Fund?
Is Andrew available just to specify what our fund currently is and what this potentially would be?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm here. We do currently have a Parks and Rec capital reserve that was established back in 2000. What is going in there currently is 10% of all fees and facility administration costs that are received for Parks and Rec services. This balance is currently about $2.5 million. And on average, we see about $137,000 per year coming in to that fund from the admissions and facility rental fees that we receive for Parks and Rec.
Great, thank you. Councillor Haggard.
I'm just wondering, while Andrew is still on the line, what would be the pros and cons of establishing a separate reserve fund? So I'm just not seeing, if you already have a reserve fund for Parks and Recreation Infrastructure, what would be the purpose of establishing a second reserve fund?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. That's a good question. So with the pros and cons, I think from staff's perspective, we would do what council would like to do as far as setting up a reserve. Currently, the Parks and Rec Reserve does have the ability to fund any future capital projects. That's there. But if council did like to look at different alternatives, we could put that in place. We could even set up a structure within the Parks and Rec Reserve to include funding that's specific for the pool, or we could do that outside in a separate reserve. Just with the status and where we're at with the investigation for the new Aquatic Center, I think it's important that we do some more work on the ACRD side to figure out what we are going to be doing in the future, and then we can set up a reserve at that point for those funds for the Aquatic Center, if that's council's direction.
So it might be a little bit premature yet to do that. Is that what you're saying, Andrew? Is that your recommendation?
Well, Madam Mayor, I think with the current reserve, we do have the ability to put funds away, and we can use funds for the Aquatic Center and a future Aquatic Center. So to create a new reserve without some clarity at this time might, what is the intent of that reserve when we haven't fully investigated what our next path is as far as the Aquatic Center investigation at the ACRD.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks, Councillor Haggard. And I'll just add, and I know I have a couple speakers as well. I recognize that we do have the Parks and Rec Capital Reserve, and that it maybe is premature to start a separate reserve, but I think that we still have time to determine exactly what the structure of the reserve will be. I think if we were to direct staff to come back with the starting steps of preparing this reserve, her staff is going to come back to council and ask if we want it to be a restricted reserve, an open reserve, what kind of regulations we want on it, and we'll have an opportunity to have those conversations. I think what Councillor Solda's motion is intending here is just to start the process of setting aside some funds intentionally for this purpose. It is too early to say exactly how much that will be, if we will take some from other reserves, if we will set a regular contribution, but we have lots of time to start those conversations. And I think there's no harm in starting them now by passing this motion and starting the process of answering these questions. So yeah, that's my opinion, I guess. There's no harm in doing this. It sends a message. And I think it's an important time to send a message, especially with the work that the regional district is taking on, that this is a priority for us and that we intend to start populating a fund. Councillor Paulson, and then Councillor Washington, and then Councillor Solda.
Yeah, I just want to caution myself, if nobody else, about the present Parks and Recreation Reserve Fund, which is just over $2 million. I caution us not to run those reserves right down, because the reserves can be used for other things. I'll just throw an example. It's not due, but if, for instance, we had to if we came due for a new roof on Glenwood or on the multiplex, we're probably, if we ran this down and issued it directly to the pool, then we'd be scrambling for those funds. So I would like to see, either as Andrew suggested, that we look at the current reserve, and there may be a portion of that, but protecting ourselves, or setting up a separate staff recommended fund, so that we're prepared when it's time to move in the pool. We at least have some funds. But I just caution us that we don't designate the whole reserve to a swimming pool, when the reserves are designed to be used for all of our facilities in the multiplex, or in the valley. And the list of those buildings that Parks and Recreation is responsible for is City Hall, Glenwood, Gyro, just all kinds of things that the reserve fund backs us up with. And also just the other portion that goes into that, and we haven't, I don't think we've put money into that reserve, but any revenue that we get from log sales or clearing in parks, that goes into that fund as well, not just admissions.
Thanks for that, Councillor Paulson, and I definitely agree. I think that we want to be cautious to really look at, all of our parks and recreation assets and anticipate what the future costs of those will be. I think that's exactly why having a separate designated fund for the pool makes perfect sense. Councillor Washington, and then Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm right along with everybody else. To me, the reserve is for when our 54-year-old pool main pump goes down, we've got the money to get it going again. And as far as this motion, I sort of anticipated sort of similar to an IRF fund, so that, so much went in it's like when the works boys are ready to buy a truck, they put money away for that truck so it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything at the time. So that's my idea. My thought was that it would be sort of like an IRF fund, but maybe not quite an IRF fund. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Washington. Councillor Solda.
Yeah, the whole idea for the motion was to have a separate reserve, because originally, way back then, I know you guys hate me going way back then, but I thought that's part of the Parks and Rec reserve that we did have. But according to me, to the rest of the gang here, no, it's not. So I would like to see a separate reserve for a new pool. We do have reserves that are earmarked and have never been used because we haven't had the situation to use it. And I really hate using that particular analogy for that particular, what I'm referring to. So I'm not going to explain that. I know we have a lot of upgrades in our Parks and Rec that need to be done. We have an aging infrastructure, and the public is well aware of it. Parks change all the time, and the upgrades have to constantly change. And I agree with whatever we have to do, like the multiplex, any of our Parks and Rec. So it's a whole thing is a separate reserve. And I just want us to be ready. It's like having a roof. I rather have money in the bank than having to go to the taxpayers and say, hey, guess what? It's going to, instead of paying this much, we're going to pay this much because we have this much already in the bank. So, and if it helps the taxpayers, why not? Thank you.
Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'd just like to add, I think Mr. Fraser pointed this out, that if we have money ready to go, it'll help access funding from other levels of government as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that. So, Council, I certainly recognize that there are some questions around what the proposed reserve would look like in terms of rules, restrictions, contributions, etc. I think that the motion is written well to be able to give us an opportunity to explore that. So I very much see this as a first step and a commitment to moving forward. So I personally will support this, and I think we still have lots of opportunity to have the conversation about exactly what it will look like. But today is really just a request to establish the fund, take the first step. So with that, I will call the question on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, and item number 2, we have a special meeting of council request. And I think this is just to, oh, that's right, for the public hearing. Director of Corporate Services, did you want to speak to this at all? Just to...
Sure, absolutely. So council is aware that the city is moving forward with its application for exclusion to the ALC. Part of that requirement is that we do hold a public hearing. Signage is scheduled to go up on the property on Wednesday, as well as notice of the public hearing. And in order to receive the submissions received at the public hearing, we will need a special meeting of council on the 29th, so that the city will meet its application deadline requirement with the ALC of April 1st.
Okay, thank you very much. Who would like to read this motion? Councillor Paulson.
Look at everybody jumping up. I'd like to move that council schedule a special meeting of council at 2 p.m. on Monday, March the 29th, 2021, for the purpose of receiving the results of the public hearing held March 23rd, 2021, regarding the McLean Mill Agricultural Land Commission exclusion application, and to consider providing a resolution to forward or not forward the application to the Agricultural Land Commission for consideration.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Poon. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Councillor Corbeil, you had put an item, emergency resolution for AVICC. Do you have a motion to put forward, or is this just a discussion point?
Well, I guess it's a motion.
Great.
And I'll make the motion that we send a resolution to the AVICC regarding freedom to roam. And if I get a seconder, I'll try to explain this.
Seconded by Councillor Solda. Go ahead.
Thank you. So in light of the recent court case where the Douglas Lake Cattle Company won the appeal over the Nicola Valley Fishing Game Club, and if you're not aware of this particular court case, it was to access public lakes through private property owned by this Douglas Lake Cattle Company. Nicola Valley Fish and Game won the original case, but on appeal, Douglas Lake won. And in part, the judge ruled that unlike other jurisdictions, British Columbia does not have public access legislation. So it is my opinion, and I appreciate it's too late for resolutions to go to AVICC. As a matter of fact, the closing date was February 26th, but they're unsure about late resolutions from the floor. And in fact, they may have to go directly to the UBCM. But I've put together a bit of a resolution, but I think it would, affect our community as well as the Merritt community, where we have public lakes that are, they're stocked by the public, and then we can't access them because of gates on private property.
Thank you. So my first question is just around process. And can someone remind me what the date is of AVICC this year?
So Madam Mayor, the date it will be held is the latter part of May. It's towards the end of May. I know they do allow late submissions, but I also, and Councillor Corbeil touched on it, they're continuing to change what that convention looks like because of the virtual format.
Yes, and so thank you for that. My question was going to be, do we have time? Because I know that there's a separate process for late resolutions than there is for emergency resolutions. I think my question is kind of, would this meet the qualifications of an emergency resolution, as it was a recent court decision? Is that correct, Councillor Corbeil?
Right.
So if it does meet the qualification for an emergency resolution, then I believe it can be put forward on the floor of AVICC. And again, that may have changed due to the style of convention. But if that's the case, then I think we have time to get more information on this. And I would like to see us, I would like to see each councillor able to, read the background information before we decide to put this forward. So if it's a matter of needing to meet a deadline today, then that's a different story. But I believe this would meet, just my basic guess is that this would meet the emergency resolution guidelines. And I think that does give us time to make sure we've all become familiar with the information prior to submitting the resolution. And Twyla, maybe you, if possible, could you just give us your opinion just from your general knowledge of AVICC?
Yeah, no, you're correct, Madam Mayor. And I believe if it follows past practices, emergency or late resolutions, there's an extended timeline, so to speak, and it's usually a month or a month later. And I recall seeing April as a date that's tagged to this emergency or late component, but we can certainly firm that up.
And Councillor Corbeil, I think that this is a worthwhile initiative to put forward. I think that the regional district would be well positioned to put it forward as well, but maybe even potentially jointly, as this is an issue I know that the regional district directors have been working very hard to combat. I just want to make sure that I'm not familiar at all with the decision, and so I want to make sure that we have opportunity to get adequate background prior to putting it forward. Councillor Paulson?
Just curious, and not sure who would be able to give me clarity, but due to the provincial or province-wide nature of this situation, could it go to UBCM rather than AVICC?
Twyla?
And I called up the AVICC correspondence, and they are actually saying past the deadline, resolutions that emerge may need to go directly to UBCM after the February 26, 2021 deadline.
So that might be a change
Yeah.
in this year's
Mhm.
policy. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point as well, Councillor Paulson, that this absolutely would be well suited for UBCM. So Councillor Corbeil, how would you feel about bringing this back, maybe just deferring this to our next meeting, where we can each have an opportunity to read the background information. Staff could have an opportunity to provide some advice on format and process, and maybe advice on whether it is well suited to try to make a emergency application if they are allowing that for AVICC, or if UBCM would be better suited. Then we could just position ourselves well for UBCM.
Yeah, I'd be good with that.
Okay.
While I can send you what I've sort of cobbled together here, just maybe save you a few minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's great. Are there any more comments before we make a motion to defer this to our next meeting? Okay, then I will move to defer this to our next meeting. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, and thanks for bringing that forward, Councillor Corbeil. Moving on to question period is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Twyla, are there any questions today?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have one submission with a number of questions contained within, and it's from Mr. Smith. So I'll just go ahead and start reading. Mr. Smith asks, what are the costs related to the oil spill incident at McLean Mill to date, including but not limited to costs for contractors, city staff, and bargaining unit employee time, fees for inspections and site attendance by government regulators, and so on? Are there other expenses expected? If so, what are the estimated totals for those expenses? Has the city received any financial assistance from its insurance provider that would help pay for the oil spill cleanup? If so, how much financial assistance was received? An email message was sent by the city to the Honorable Jonathan Wilkinson, Minister, Environment and Climate Change, in December of 2020. The email message is referred to in the copy of a February 15th letter to Minister Wilkinson that appears in today's agenda. May I have a copy of the email message sent to the minister? Has the city explored any of the other government funding opportunities that would help pay for the oil spill at McLean Mill, which were identified to the city during a conversation with the acting National Historic Sites Manager? Would the city please identify which opportunities were explored, and if any of those exploratory routes have resulted in any actual or anticipated financial assistance for the oil spill cleanup costs? It was July 6, 2020, or 8 months ago, that the audit committee last met. There are no dates scheduled for this committee to meet in the near term, according to the city's website. Good internal governance of any corporation includes oversight by a financial audit committee. Why has there been such a lapse by council for this important function of public oversight of city expenditures? And when will the audit committee next meet? When could the public expect to receive detailed fiscal 2020 financial data for McLean Mill operations? The 2020 financial data should be presented by reports generated from accounting software. It was council's requirement that the previous contractor at McLean Mill would report McLean Mill financial data for each fiscal year in this manner. Does council intend to hold the current contractor to the same standard? That concludes Mr. Smith's questions.
Thank you, Twyla. And I'm going to call on the CAO not to try to answer all of those right now, but CAO, if you're available.
I'm Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Tim. I know that there's a lot of questions in there that will need more than just a quick on-the-spot answer. Are you able to provide any information now on any of, heard really three main categories of questions: the cost of the oil spill, the audit committee schedule and the 2020 financials from McLean Mill? Or should we request further information on those 3 items in a report?
Madam Mayor, Mr. Smith likes accuracy and he's going to want accurate answers. So I would like to take the opportunity to bring back those accurate answers at your next meeting.
Thank you, Tim. We all like accuracy, so very much appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Just for your information, the auditor of the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce will be presenting to the board at next month's meeting. So probably at the following month, they'll be available at their public AGM. And I know that Mr. Smith had asked for audited financial statements, so they should be prepared.
Thank you. Appreciate that for information. Okay, thanks for that, Tim. And Twyla, assuming no other questions from members of the public?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Then I think that is adjournment. Would somebody like to move adjournment?
Move adjournment.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Poon, seconded by Councillor Paulson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone.